She was 20, full of dreams and quiet thoughts, the kind of girl who found comfort in little things, a favorite book, the breeze on a late afternoon, or the soft hum of the world just before sunset. Her days were predictable, wrapped in the usual rhythm of college lectures and family dinners, until he entered her thoughts more than he ever should have. Her neighbor, Uncle Ray, as the neighborhood called him, was nothing like the rest. He wasn't old in the way that made her feel like a child, but rather seasoned. 38, quiet, kind-eyed, and always busy with something in his garden or repairing little things around the house. She noticed how he greeted everyone with warmth, but somehow, with her, there was a different kind of stillness. She felt it the day he handed her a dropped notebook, without saying a word, just a glance, as though he already knew the kind of thoughts that lived between the pages. It wasn't love, not yet. It was interest. It was something stirring inside her that made her linger on the balcony a little longer when he stepped outside. It started with polite nods and brief smiles. Then came the casual, neighborly exchanges. He once helped her carry groceries up the steps when it was raining. Another time, she watered his plants while he was away for a weekend. They didn't talk much then, but when they did, it was always genuine about the weather, books she was reading, or the bird that kept landing on his mailbox every morning. She noticed how he listened, how he remembered tiny details she didn't even recall sharing. One afternoon, the rain came unannounced. She had just returned from the library and stood outside her gate, fumbling for keys. He appeared at his porch and, without a word, walked over with an umbrella. He waited until she was inside, drenched but laughing. She invited him in for a towel. That was the first time they sat across from each other in her living room. Their conversation was light, full of jokes and quick questions. Still, beneath it all, something unspoken hung in the air, like a string gently pulling them closer. He told her that day about his recent divorce, not with bitterness, but with a calm sense of acceptance. She listened, not out of pity, but out of a need to understand what made him so quietly strong. She found herself asking questions, wanting to know more. And as he answered, his voice steady and his eyes kind, she noticed her heartbeat respond in a way it never had around anyone else. It wasn't dramatic. There were no sparks or bold declarations. It was quiet, slow, like pages turning softly in a book. Neither of them realized they were writing together. That night, she lay in bed thinking about the way he looked at her, not inappropriately, not even boldly, just real, like he saw her, not as the girl next door, but as someone worth knowing deeply. Something inside her shifted, and it wasn't going back. She began noticing how her days started to feel incomplete if she didn't see him. It wasn't something she planned or tried to make happen. It was natural, almost effortless, the way her thoughts wandered toward him in the middle of studying or while folding laundry. He had become a quiet presence in her world, not demanding attention, but somehow always there in the back of her mind. What started as chance meetings turned into subtle habits. She began taking evening walks, knowing he might be outside. Sometimes he was, sometimes he wasn't, but the hope of seeing him was enough to keep her coming. Their conversations became longer. She started sharing pieces of herself. Her dreams of becoming a writer, her childhood memories, the way she sometimes felt out of place among people her age. He listened with a focus that made her feel important, never rushing her thoughts. He shared, too, about his first heartbreak, the loneliness after his marriage ended, and the peace he found in simple routines. With him, she felt understood, even in her silence. One evening, as they sat on his porch sipping tea, she told him how she hated feeling like she had to act her age all the time, how everyone expected her to be carefree and wild, but she wasn't. She was thoughtful, quiet, always searching for meaning in things most people overlooked. He looked at her for a long moment and said, That's exactly what makes you rare and beautiful." Her heart stumbled at those words. She didn't respond. She couldn't, but something in his voice made her feel safe, even in that sudden vulnerability. After that night, their connection deepened, not through touch or dramatic moments, but in the pauses between their words, in the comfort of silence shared without needing to fill it. There was one afternoon when she told him about her fear of not being enough for anyone, for anything. He listened, nodded, and simply said, "You are more than enough. You just haven't been around people who see it." That stayed with her. It echoed in her mind during quiet nights, replacing the doubt with something softer. He never tried to define what was happening between them. Neither did she. But both of them felt it. The way his eyes lingered a little longer, the way her voice softened when she spoke to him. It wasn't a game. It wasn't casual. It was careful, intentional, and filled with unspoken emotions that neither of them dared to name out loud. Until one day, while they watched the sky fade into shades of orange and gold, she whispered, almost to herself, "I don't know what this is, but it feels like something that matters." He didn't answer immediately, but the way he looked at her, that steady, gentle gaze, was enough. It said everything, that he felt it too, that whatever was growing between them wasn't imagined. It was real, and it was only beginning. Days turned into weeks, and what once felt like a quiet connection had grown into something neither of them could ignore. There were no official confessions, no carefully crafted labels. But the air between them had changed. When they spoke, there was warmth and an undercurrent of feeling that no longer needed to be hidden. She noticed the way he gently remembered her preferences, how she liked her tea, the author she'd mentioned once in passing, or the kind of music she played when she was trying to concentrate. He paid attention not out of obligation, but because he wanted to, and that mattered to her more than anything. He too had changed. His posture relaxed more around her. His laughter came easier. He started opening up in ways he hadn't before, telling her stories from his youth that were both funny and painful. She could see how life had shaped him, how experience had made him careful with his emotions. And yet with her, he was allowing himself to feel again. That trust, that emotional honesty, it deepened the bond between them. One afternoon, she showed him a short story she had written, hesitant and nervous. It was about a girl who found comfort in unexpected company. He read it slowly, carefully, and when he looked up, his eyes said more than his words ever could. "You wrote your heart," he said, and she knew then that he saw all of her, even the parts she tried to hide from the world. She didn't have to pretend with him. She didn't have to shrink herself or be louder or funnier or different. She was enough just as she was. People around them started to notice they spent time together, but no one asked questions. It was innocent, respectful, but undeniably close. Her parents saw him as a kind neighbor, someone reliable and trustworthy. He never crossed any lines. He never tried to be more than what the moment allowed. And yet, in their private exchanges, it was clear they were no longer just neighbors. There was a mutual understanding growing between them, and it was strong. She began to question her own feelings. Was it love? Was it admiration? Or something entirely its own? But every time she looked at him, every time he listened like her words were worth something, she knew it didn't matter what name it had. What mattered was how it made her feel, calm, understood, valued. She had never experienced anything so steady before. It wasn't fast or overwhelming. It was slow, like roots taking hold beneath the surface. One evening, after a long conversation about nothing in particular, he looked at her with quiet affection and said, "Whatever this is, it matters to me." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even expected, but it confirmed everything she had felt growing silently between them. Her heart answered without needing words. It mattered to her too, deeply. And from that moment on, they both knew the story they were living wasn't just something passing through, it was becoming a part of who they were.